Before humans existed, other animals were roaming our planet. Life has found a way to evolve in every corner of the globe. But over the last few hundred years, humans have been changing the planet in ways we're still trying to understand. One of those changes has been moving animals around the world to new locations. Sometimes this has seemed necessary for people to settle and prosper in new countries. But the introduction of new species sometimes has big consequences.
I'm Katrin Capon, and I'm here on the east coast of Iceland, in search of reindeer. It might feel like reindeer belong in Iceland. It's cold, it's snowy, but they were actually brought here from Norway, a place that looks fairly similar. Reindeer were introduced to this volcanic island in the late 1700s by humans, so therefore they're called a non-native species. Native species are organisms that have become part of the ecosystem through natural processes. They have evolved in that location. Non-native or introduced species are found outside of their natural range because of human activity. Sometimes they don't make any impact on the environment. But if a species has a negative influence on the other organisms in the area or the environment itself, then they are called an invasive species.
From our base in the East Fjords, we started to scour the wild and frozen landscape, looking for reindeer.
Reindeer are now the largest wild land mammal living in Iceland. 4 separate attempts were made to introduce them here, with the aim to domesticate them for their meat and their hides, but they wanted to be wild from the very beginning. It wasn't easy for them. The really harsh winters and not much food meant that most of the reindeer died out, and they almost went extinct on the island. But a very small remnant population of just 100 individuals was found in the east. That population has grown now to over 6,000 to 7,000 individuals. And whilst populations of reindeer globally are declining over the last decades, the reindeer on Iceland are doing surprisingly well. During the summer months, the reindeer go up into the highlands, super high, north of the Vatnajökull glacier, which is just here. It's warmer there in the summer, so it's more comfortable for them, and there's still plenty of food. If you visit Iceland in the summer months, you'll very rarely see them. But in the winter, like right now, they'll come back down to the lowlands in search of food, which is a bit more abundant, but it's still very cold. So, whose job is it to find and monitor reindeer on an island this big? We reached out to the East Iceland Nature Research Centre to find out more.
After a night of watching the northern lights dance through the sky, we woke to Iceland at -10 degrees. We packed our cabin and headed into town to meet reindeer tracker Ivar.
So it's great to meet you. Could you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do in Iceland?
Well, my name is Ivar. I live here. I'm resident in the east of Iceland. Been born here and raised. I'm actually own my own company, but I'm also a hunting reindeer guide. I'm brought up here in the countryside, so I've been around reindeers most of my adult life.
Amazing. So also you're involved with tagging and tracking the reindeer. How does that work?
Well, there's a deer has been a couple of years ago. They wanted to mark them and track them, and it started by just ear tags, stuff like that. When the reindeer were caught, even they got stuck in fences, stuff like that. Then they tried to sedate them. That usually did not end up that well. Then now we actually, when I came into this like 4 years ago, we are using a net gun. So we drive up to them on a snowmobile, 2 of us, and I shoot a net from a gun over them, and then we are able to capture them and put that GPS collar on them. So I think at the most we had 15 reindeers with GPS colors in 1 year. So the batteries live in like 2 years probably. So we're actually like every year like renewing a little bit of the colors. And this year actually we have I think about 10 colors we have to get out. So it is as a job, it's one of the funniest things you do because you're actually out there riding snowmobiles, you're hunting reindeers, and it is just a great time. Yeah, and also the information the agency gathers from it is actually quite vital and has like opened up quite the new. They're realizing how different the reindeers behave, how much some of them move around, and because we have been tracking, I think, like one female for 4 years. So we actually put a collar on her, I think in 2018, and then we switched, got her again and switched colors. So then we can actually extend that period. We can keep track of a single one.
So obviously these reindeer, they're not native to Iceland, they've been introduced. Have you seen, or through the science that you're doing, have you seen that they're having an effect on the ecosystem?
Well, the areas they have is quite vast, so the population is usually a little bit, there's not a hard impact on the ground, but they share the highlands usually with sheep and people, obviously. But I think grazing-wise, the diet doesn't really cross the sheep that much, so they don't really graze on the same things. But there's been a couple of things, like if they accumulate on a small area, you can actually see the ground suffer a little bit. But I think mostly maybe during the winter time they come down from the highlands. They come down to onto fields, onto stuff like that. But I think the farmers maybe obviously can get a little bit annoyed with them, but especially if they are destroying the fences and stuff like that. But I think in general, we're welcomed here, and they've just been a part of east of Iceland.
Yeah, so people have just accepted them here now as part of wildlife, part of the environment.
Yeah, definitely, because we also because they are only in the east of Iceland. I think for us who are native here, they are just part of our culture. They're like the thing we have here. So I think most of the people would really miss them if we did not have them, at least.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was so interesting to hear about your research that you're doing, and I can't wait to go and see them in the field now.
After talking to Ivar, he recommended a local spot where we could get our first close-up encounter with reindeer.
So these reindeer are both males. They're about 2 years old. And as you can see, they've actually lost their antlers. This is where the antlers would be. And because of being this time of year, they actually lose their antlers after the rut. They have some really nice adaptations for this type of winter and this weather. So you can see first off, they have these very broad crescent-shaped feet, and that's to help them walk through the snow. They also have, which you can't see, but they have a kind of heating system in their nasal cavity. And it means that the cold air from the outside gets warmed up before it enters their lungs. So it's like having a little kind of heating system in their nasal cavity. Their eyes are also adapted, so they change colour between the seasons. In the summer, their eyes are kind of a golden colour, but in the winter, they turn almost blue. And that's to help with dealing with these very dark winters that we have here in Iceland. And then the last thing that they have that's adapted to the weather is their pelt. Woo! They're just practicing rotting there. So their pelt, they have 2 different layers. They have this woolly, thick underlayer, and then over the top they have the longer hair strands, which are actually hollow. So that really helps insulate them against these cold winters. Having spoken to Ivar, it's not yet clear if the reindeer are having a negative impact on the environment. And for the most part, the majority of the human population living in Iceland are in the west, and they don't have much interaction with the reindeer population living in the east. But what we do know is that around the world, when we introduce a species to an environment where they previously were not, it can end badly. There is, however, an exception to the rule, and that's the reintroduction of species. Now this happens when a species has died out locally, and that might be because hunting drove them to extinction or habitat destruction has destroyed their home. Now, if we bring the species back into that environment, if managed well, it can have a really positive impact on the environment. For example, in the UK, we've just brought beavers back into the wild, and this has created wetland habitats for a whole host of different species. So crucially, the reintroduction of species, if managed well, has a really positive impact on the environment. So introducing species is really complicated, and that's okay. There are upsides and there are downsides. But one of the upsides is tourism. Iceland is famous for its tourism. People come here to see the snowy landscapes, the glaciers, the volcanoes, the waterfalls and the aurora. And now they come here for the reindeer.
I'm Helga Hrönn Melsteð. I am a tour guide and some other things also in my place. Yeah.
And how long have you been taking people out to see the reindeer in Iceland?
For 8 years.
8 years,
Yes.
okay, that's a long
Yes.
time. And how many tourists do you take roughly a year? Are you taking big, obviously not in a COVID year?
No, I have actually no idea. But it might be few hundred, I would guess, yeah.
And people are quite fascinated about the reindeer?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they are. You can't see them anywhere else in Iceland than in East Iceland. So, yes, they come here, and still we are the only company who's offering reindeer tours in East Iceland. So, yeah.
And do you think it's quite good for the local economy having a reindeer tour and bringing tourists in to do this activity?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. People are very, like it a lot. They get all kind of information and just to be in the nature here, because it is quite amazing, and we are here where not so many other people are. So yeah, we are usually just alone.
The hidden gem of Iceland,
Yes.
the east side. And so what is our plan for today? What are we trying to do today?
We are going to see reindeers. We are going to find them. Of course they are wild, so we never know if we see them, but it's pretty likely.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Well, I can't wait. And this is the vehicle that we're going in,
Yep.
so it's definitely made for the trip. Look at
Yes.
the tyres.
Exactly. It is a good car.
Do you get many tourists coming specifically for the reindeer?
Yeah, there has been a lot this winter, a lot more than all the winters.
Really?
So I don't know what happened.
Maybe since COVID and people couldn't travel and then they got excited to
Yes, maybe. Of course, nobody else is doing these tours, so it takes time to, go between people. You
Yeah.
can see them, and you can
The word
have
of mouth.
guided tours.
Yeah.
So probably it's that. But it's actually pretty easy to see them when you drive. But not everybody see them, even though they are very close to the road. Because they blend very well in.
Amazing. So it does look like antlers, doesn't it?
Yes.
So the reindeers have quite a specialised diet. They mainly like to eat the lichen, and this is called reindeer lichen. It actually looks like the antlers, but this is probably why the reindeers didn't survive the earlier introductions, because the places that they were introduced to just didn't have this very specialised lichen that they like to eat. And Do you like this part of Iceland not having as many tourists, or do you think it would be better to have more tourists? Do you
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Because it seems very nice and peaceful, but I guess it's good for the economy in some aspects to
Of
have.
course. And you know, hotels need more tourists, of the whole year especially. We get a lot of tourists over the summer. I would say that we have enough for the summer. I like that we are not so busy, you know.
Yeah.
And I really want to show people the area without people.
Yeah.
And that's what we are aiming at.
Yeah.
Area where nobody is.
We've happened upon a small herd of about 15 individuals. They're just up here and got quite a few antlers, so quite a few females. It's the middle of winter, so they've still got that winter coat there. It's longer, hollow hairs, so it's a more white coat. I can get fairly close, but I don't want to get too much closer. I don't want to scare them. These ones are a bit more habituated to people and traffic because they live in the lowlands at this point. These ones are fairly brave. You can see now they're even moving off a little bit because I'm here. So I'm going to take a step back. But it's amazing to see them so close.
We were really lucky to see as many reindeer as we did. We'd found what we were looking for, and as the snow came down, we said goodbye to the reindeer of East Iceland, until they treated us to one last sighting, and it was the best yet.
So here you can see the reindeer's footprints, and as they crossed the road they made a really long train, and it was really fun to watch, just one after a time, all the way weaving through this landscape, and they're just now on top of the hill grazing on some lichen. I've had an amazing time in Iceland with these reindeer, but I'm left with a few questions. Is it ethical to introduce species into new environments? And can humans really justify changing whole ecosystems for their own benefit? What is clear is that ecosystems are hugely complex. Scientists can spend whole careers just studying one aspect of them. And as the climate's changing, these habitats will change too. So we need more scientists, more activists, and more conservationists to study them, because one thing is for certain: humans rely on the natural world.